What's going down,
Wait,
Yinz?
hang on.
God, that
Got
was
hot.
so hot in my ear.
Real hot.
It's a little, you got
Jeez.
jacked up there. It's a little
Yeah,
bit different. Sit
I
back
guess-
and grab that drink.
Listen,
You were good until you leaned up and
No, you're good.
we here at HUMANIMAL, we're coming into episode 11, but before we get to that, if anybody knows a guy that can actually run a podcast out there, we're hiring.
We need a podcast guy.
That blew my left eardrum out. I'm not kidding.
Let's start again. Let's go again.
Let's give it another whirl.
Whenever you're ready.
What is going down, Yinz? Casey Kiefer here from the HUMANIMAL podcast. And we are live with episode number 11, according to AB, right?
11 it is.
Should be like episode 111, but we took our time getting to this thing until we launched the new web. But we are down here doing things a little different. We're doing a little podcast from the road, kind of like we did this past fall. We are down right now in Illinois. I've got AB and Cody. Cody's actually not taking part. What do you got going on over there, Code? Cody opted to sit out this one, but we've got AB, myself, Cody, and then we have a super special, awesome, very knowledgeable guest with us today here from Tine Seed Company. We've got Jason Snavely. Jason,
hey.
how you doing, man?
Boy, I feel special.
He's very special. Listen, if you are a geek for habitat, a geek for whitetail, and you're a geek for knowledge, you are going to want to stick around for the entirety of this series. So we're going to be doing a series, coming back and forth with the Illinois property and what we're doing down here with Jason and relying on him and his expertise for a lot of ins and outs in the food plotting world and the seed and the regenerative ag and stuff that I'm not going to steal the thunder on. I'm going to let Jason kind of dive into all that because he's way smarter than I am when it comes to it. But this is going to be a lot of fun. We're down here in Illinois. Today we actually spent our first day on the farm looking at it from that perspective, right? So
Jason's first view at the farm, boots on the ground.
Real quick, we had another first today.
We did.
We had another first, and he's not on, and I'm sad that but I will steal the thunder on this. Cody found his first whitetail shed today. Hey, yeah, there you go, little buddy.
Cheers.
And then the second one he found was a stick. So
It was very dark. It was like a chocolate
So
horn.
we took that first one back.
yeah, that's right.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. The second one, he's like, it had a hook. It had a curl to it. It had a curl.
Close.
Yeah. No, it was great. So, we are sitting around here. It is late. I think Jason spent like 15 hours in the truck to get over here. We drove down bright and early this morning, left home around 5 o'clock. But AB's got some bush lattes. Jason,
Of
you
course.
and I got a little bourbon action
Brown
going
water.
on.
That's right.
Yeah. So this should get interesting. We're just getting started here.
Yes.
But we'll see where this thing goes. What anything you want to add up front, AB, before we get rocking and rolling?
I mean, my mind was literally blown today. I'm very green when it comes to food plotting and soil and everything, so it's been awesome getting to know Jason and he blew my mind today. He had me eating clover, smelling dirt, the magnesium smell, like it smells like a handful of coins,
Sure.
He told me why that's good or bad.
Metallic, you mean?
Or metallics.
He's green, folks.
Did I say
He's
magnesium?
green. Magnesium is what you went with.
Hey.
Crack another bush latte.
Maybe it was. Oh, no, mine is blown, and it's
Magnesium's tomorrow.
yeah.
Just day one. Relax.
Yeah.
We don't get into the heavy shit till day
That's
2.
right.
Let's relax.
No, I'm excited. I got some questions I want to ask him in this podcast, so I've been saving it. Didn't want to ask him today in the field, so
Sure.
I'm ready.
Cool. Well, I think, I'm just going to set the stage here real quick up front. So Jason and I, we actually talked a couple years back.
That's right. Yeah.
We had talked a couple years back about, potentially trying to get something together in this food plot side and trying to get some wheels in motion. And at the time, we were just so busy with what was going on the rival wild side, the drop side, and being in Alaska and doing all that stuff, every single August through October every year up there in Alaska, and then Go to the Wild for Travel Channel, Brothers of the Wild for Animal Planet. We just had so much going on that we never really could connect. But, this Illinois property and getting in here and getting this brand new piece of ground, really, for me, and I think I told you this when we talked, it ignited that passion again for me of the habitat, the land management,
Yeah.
you know, because that's how I started back in the early days of my career, back in the guiding days and the outfitting days, was really focused more on that side than anything. And then over the years, as we got busy with the filming and everything else, we started to get more into lease ground, where a lot of times we don't have control. But this Illinois piece has really changed the game for us. So as I started to kind of reignite that passion and get back into it, you're like the first. I'm like, I gotta find Jason. Like, I have got to get a hold of him, because the stuff that he is doing is so incredible. Like, when I look at it, and I told Jason this the first time we talked, I read through some of the stuff that you've put out there, and I'm just like, this dude's like speaking my language. I mean, this is a whole nother level, as JB would say. So, but before we get into the nitty gritty of all that, do everybody a favor, do us a favor, just walk through your background. Tell everybody who you are, where you come from, what you've done. I mean, all that stuff, because it's impressive. It really is.
Wow, I don't know. That's a big setup there. I appreciate that.
And drum roll.
You know, it's funny because I could, you know, you mentioned that, you know, your passion, and you seemed, I could hear that in the phone. Your rekindling of this whole, okay, now we have control. You know, let's manage this thing and take this and make it special. So I could. And I enjoyed that. That's why I jumped onto this with both feet. At this point in my career, that was, truthfully, it was refreshing to hear somebody who's doing it, you know, strictly from a passion position. So appreciate that. So yeah, anyway, we talked about it today. This is 21 years
old
for me, which is kind of interesting because my when I started this, my banker looked at me and he said, "Kid, you can't get people to pay you to teach them how to hunt or teach them how to manage properties." And he didn't quite understand, obviously, the nature of the industry. But so I went to Mississippi State University and super focused on whitetails and game species. And I've just always been real passionate about being out in the field. So the academic part was fun to an extent, but I knew from the very beginning that the office is not where I belong. That just was not my arena.
Got to take it outside.
Exactly. Yep. And I, as much as I enjoy reading the research and following that, I'm a big fan of getting out there, getting dirty, and just observing, right, and thinking outside the box, which again is something that I really enjoy about you guys. You're just, nothing is inside the lines and everything's outside the box, and all is fair. So I've appreciated that so far. But so as a field biologist, a private consultant, and a certified wildlife biologist, I've been working now for 2020. This is my 21st season.
You've seen a lot in those years, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Just helping clients, which are all amazing people. Yep. And I say this all the time that, think about the kind of character, right, who would hire somebody to help them develop their property, right? Yep. So they're still the kind to get out there, on the habitat and crush some brush on their own, produce their own food plots, manage their own plots, cut their own trees. But at some point they either hit a plateau or something clicked and they said, you know what, maybe I better put this chainsaw down and call somebody before I get into trouble. And of course, most of the time they're not really getting into trouble, but
they got to go to the bullpen for one reason or another, right?
Do you think it's like a lot of the times they're probably so focused on one thing and maybe they're just not thinking a little bit more and they just need another eye and they need another mind on it probably? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I do. And there's, it's even after all the years of being dropped, pardon the expression, on properties all over the Whitetails range and having to recalibrate. I recently had a forester who I work with say to me, I don't know any other consultant who has been able to travel as much as you and go from the big thicket of East Texas to the South Texas brush country to, the Finger Lakes, region of New York and all across the Piedmont of South Carolina, and it's been fun. But at the same time, I think a lot of these people have also taught me exponentially more than I'll ever learn from them, and that's to me that's what has made me the best I can be, is just by being open-minded And we got into some stuff today that I think we kind of agreed that there really was no right or wrong answer necessarily.
Yeah.
But under an adaptive management program, we would make some sort of action. We'd have to, inaction is not an action. We just need to do something, put our heads together, make that move, and then sit back and assess and say, okay, I think we did okay or we did poor. Let's adapt and let's make this right. So
I think it's so important in the habitat herd management, whatever side of the management equation and coin you want to look at. A lot of this stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Do you need some more bourbon over there?
No. I'm trying to think of the best way. So there's best practices, right? There's best practices of certain ways you can do things.
Yeah.
And we don't do that.
But
we go the other way.
Listen, every property's unique. Every deer's unique. Every hunter's unique. There's so many variables to what we do. Every situation is unique. And to your point of inaction is not action. Do something, right?
Yeah.
And then observe, sit back, assess, see what your results are, and learn something.
And learn, absolutely.
And if you don't learn something, then you're not doing something right.
Go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, you got to learn something.
Our whole lives, especially we start off in kindergarten, go through school, and we're taught. And I have a bunch of teachers in my family, so I can make fun of teachers. But we're taught not to fail. We fear failure, right? And failure's bad. And if that's your gig, buying a piece of property and especially small acreage management. I'm talking thousands of acres and smaller. You're gonna fail, and that's okay. If you fail forward, you pick up and you say, you know what, maybe we didn't do this quite so good. Old Ricky, the neighbor, killed our 190.
Ricky, bastard.
It's time to make something happen, or kill him, or do whatever we have to do.
Failure's the best learning tool for me. I mean, you got to fail for me to learn, really, to never do that again.
Well, we talk about in production all the time, and even some of the stuff we do. And if you're going to fail, you're going to fail. Just hope you fail fast.
Yeah.
I hope you fail fast and learn something from it. And the good news in the production world is, by definition, a failure, nobody has seen it anyway. So, right?
It's all word of mouth.
If it's a failure, nobody saw it anyway. So we're like, ooh, escape that one. So, no, but part of that too is to your point about how we operate, which is a lot how you operate. And I want to get into that as we move forward here with drop tine and some of the seed stuff and the ag type stuff. Is just coloring outside the lines and not being scared to do things different, right? I think, food plotting in the early days when it was developed, a lot of that stuff came on the scene and it came on hot. And think about the big changes that have taken place since then. I don't know. Has there really been a ton? It's kind of like one of those. Yeah, there's been advancements in how we plant and certain things, but for the most part, and you guys will hear this word a lot. It's a lot of monoculture stuff. It's a lot of just, here we go. We're gonna use chemicals. We're gonna spray stuff. We're gonna plant a monoculture because we like the look of pretty clover. And oftentimes, is that best for what's going on in the dirt itself? Is that best for the animal? I mean, there's so many things into this equation which you tap into, and I think it's really interesting to see somebody, from the wildlife biology side, really grasp onto that agricultural side of things.
Yeah, right? Well, that's a good point, and I think ironically it's the reason that I've been able to really jump on with both feet, because agriculture is biology, and that may sound crazy, but we've been ignoring the biology we talked about in the field a lot today.
Yep.
It's a biological system. It is not strictly a physical and chemical system.
Right.
So once we understand that, it changes the game dramatically.
Yeah.
But I always say, if whitetails could talk, they would be the first ones to say that the food plot industry has changed absolutely nada in 30 to 50 years.
Yep.
Right. So, maybe we've changed, some composition of some bags and added some sexy, species or varieties, genetically superior type stuff. But in their eyes, from a ruminant nutrition standpoint, it has just been the same thing, just a different bag.
Yep.
And I was part of that. I readily admit on a daily basis that I joined in that crowd. When I started consulting for that crowd, I thought, this seems to be the way to do it. We just need to tweak a few things. And it just, sometimes good things, they take time, right? To realize that, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's where we're at now. We're actually about, at this point, I guess 4 or 5 years post that realization, and it's just changed, opened up a whole new world for us.
So let's talk about that. So let's talk about kind of your entry into your own, drop tine and the seed side of things, and kind of just how you got started there, and then give everybody a little bit of a rundown of what drop tine means and what it is for you.
So for me, it was learning about wildlife science, wildlife ecology, at a school like Mississippi State, where it was a lot of applied, hands-on research.
Yep.
And then being able to go to South Texas and really see how that works. I just really had this drive to get out there and teach people what I knew, which at the time was a very limited scope.
Sure.
And when you see things from that perspective done in a way that people would be absolutely astounded to have that kind of success on small acreage, it makes you want to kind of spread the word, right? So I started as a consultant, and for 5 to 7 years, I guess, really just worked with the major food plot companies, and when they asked, offered my assistance, and sort of got into doing my own, as we talked today, kind of my home brew in the barn, just throwing things in even an old corn sack. That's what I used to use, my old corn sacks, and handing those out to clients, sometimes charging them, sometimes not even charging them, just saying, listen, I know you're disappointed with what's out there, try this.
Yeah, let's see what it does.
That's right. And they would come back to me and they would say, I need you to repeat that because my daughter killed the biggest buck or the only buck or whatever. And I would laugh and say, that's great, I appreciate that, but the only problem is I have no idea what I put in it for you, because I would just shoot from the hip, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yep.
A lot more of this.
Like a good chef, right? Some of this,
exactly.
Some of this, some of that.
Which I am not.
Turns
I'm
out
not
great.
a good chef.
Well, maybe you are. Maybe you don't know that.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. But when you start to play around with things like that, and you kind of have the freedom, then suddenly you have the flexibility and the freedom to put whatever you want in the bag.
Yep.
And you don't have to worry about meeting some fictitious price point to, put it in a box store, which there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't what my clients were looking for, and it really wasn't even me much at the time. It was my clients who were paying me to help help them become an island essentially, and do something very special to set themselves apart from their neighbors.
Sure.
And there's a lot of pressure in that. I've had a lot of people, especially young people in the wildlife world, call, email, and want to know, how can I get into this? This is a dream job. And it is, but there's, just like any job, when someone's writing you a check and it's
Pressure.
not all under your control,
Things change a little when there's
That's right.
money involved
So
in that,
for me, I would always strive, and I'm kind of speaking like my career's over, but I guess I just feel like I'm in a new era here in my career where I'm able to do my passion projects.
Yep.
But I felt a lot of pressure, and I wanted to constantly educate myself and push myself to think outside the box. I know that's used an awful lot. Go 180 of everybody else, and that's kind of what led to I always knew that when I went out into my fields, I would do a post-season sort of meeting, a board meeting with just me and me, and I would sit there and I would look into my plots and I would think, here we go. Here goes the brown water.
Don't mind me.
You need some new rocks over there.
Yeah, no.
It's chilly in this barn, but not quite chilly enough.
We'll get there.
So anyway, one thing led to another, and I realized that, my plots, which were established in, agricultural fields that had been 2 and 3 generations of recreational tillage. Just like if they had extra time, they were out there tilling, right? My A horizon was down in the lake, down in Fishing Creek, everywhere but on my property. And I didn't quite understand at the time, and you saw me today. I know you made a couple of comments. Sometimes things just grab my attention.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the last 21 years that to just follow it.
Yep.
Whether if it's a deer trail or, something that I just feel I need to address. And
I think my term for that today was, "What are you biologying over there?"
that was your
I was
term.
like, "What are you
man.
biologying?" And it was it was a walkabout, right?
Yeah.
I look over and
Yeah.
Snavely's over there crawling through the bushes. I'm like, "Oh, what's he biologying over there in the woods?"
Checking out the tick,
Maybe
the
I
tick
should-
count.
AB and I are 100 yards the other direction. We're like, maybe we should go that way. No, it wasn't that bad.
It was probably a mushroom.
yeah, exactly.
But so yeah, you learn to just observe and just take note and be patient and observe longer. And I was looking at basically I didn't plant at that time into soil. I planted into rocks that had a little bit of dirt, surrounding them. So I started researching soil health, and it was kind of one of those palms up across the forehead moments where I thought, wow, this is a biological system. And although I'm not technically a microbiologist or a dirt nerd at the time, or a soil scientist or an agronomist, I'm a biologist. So this should make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And the more I dug, the more I realized, wow, this is really simple. This is 101 type stuff. This isn't complicated.
Yep.
I mean, we're getting back to photosynthesis, just the simple aspects of science. And that's when I realized that I needed to do what we call employ biomimicry, which means anything that we do, we have to stop before we do it and say, does this follow nature's principles? And I know that may sound tree huggerish,
Right.
and some of this stuff perhaps borders. We talked about that today. It maybe borders, sounding like that. But I find that my clients are heavily invested in their properties, and they want to do right, and they want to hand down a property that's much better than what they found it. And that's the drive that I had with my property. It was treated improperly, partly by me, admittedly so.
Yep.
And when I heard, you and I have had some conversations over the years, and when you finally picked up this property, I could hear that there was no stopping you, and it was just 110% plow forward. We want to do what's right, and we love this whole soil health aspect of it, and the regenerative wildlife, regenerative ag. So here we are.
I think there's, for me anyway, just to go back to the tree hugger-esque type thing, right? To me, I think it's if it's anything, it's a level of responsibility that we have.
Sure.
To do things. I mean, nature had shit figured out long before we ever got here.
Absolutely.
Right? So, if anything, we've come in and thrown a giant monkey wrench into that whole system.
Yeah.
And now, recognizing that we've done that, there is such a thing as unintended consequences, right? So we get into the farming side, the monocultures, okay, we create that, wow, look at what we're doing with these crops. The unintended consequences of that, of the leaching and the chemicals in the soil and the water. And, I mean, we talked about it today. Shit runs downhill, goes in, to the creek first. From the creek, it goes to the river. From the Illinois, it goes to,
That's right.
where. And it ends up, eventually.
There's a dead zone in the Gulf that's getting massiver.
Right.
That'd go along with some of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's massiver. I mean, it's growing by leaps and bounds every year.
Yep.
It's there. If you don't believe it, go check it out. I have, and it comes from this insurance policy of let's just add a little bit more just in case.
Yep.
And perhaps that worked at one time.
Yep.
That doesn't work anymore.
Right. But I think, everybody looks at, and this is just, my mind works in weird ways. You'll get to learn that over time. Everybody looks at, steward of the land. I want to improve the land, right? So whether that means, doing certain things with the timber or plant and cover, all that kind of stuff. But nobody ever looks under the ground. And I think that's the fascinating part about this is because in reality, that's where a lot of this
Bingo.
stuff starts.
That's right.
That's exactly where
under
it starts.
the ground.
That's right.
So
It's the foundation to everything.
you're right. It's the foundation.
Yeah, and that I came to that realization here a few years ago, and now when I catch myself looking at a really good, as we did today, a really good stand and a food plot, and instead of looking at that lush growth, I have to retrain my brain and say, okay, what's going on in the soil beneath all of this in the root zone? And you'll notice that my favorite tool now, which apparently we've named
Karen.
today.
It's Karen.
Sharon.
No, I like Karen.
Over Karen?
The Sharon or Karen.
Not sure I'm a fan of any of them, to be honest with you. I was thinking Waylon, but
You're the one that called her.
Yeah, it's a she.
Yeah. Is a spade. Your favorite tool is a spade.
a spade,
I mean, a spade is a spade, though. I mean,
It absolutely is. And I like to, you know, I know a lot of soil guys will take a probe. And for me, a probe, if I see someone using a probe, it tells me that they have no idea what they're looking at.
Really?
That they still don't look at that as a biological system.
Yeah.
I want to get that spade in the soil. I want to break open a big old wedge. You were having a heart attack today. I want to turn that food plot upside down, and I want to look at the soil. I want to smell it. We did everything but taste it, which I almost
did too.
And that's where you learn, you know. That's where you get soil under your fingernails, and you see plow pans. You see what's going on. We didn't find any life for the most part.
Yeah.
No earthworms, which is a soil health indicator.
Right.
Like I said, a lot of layers of plow pans where you could, and this, you know, your plots are nothing like my food plots. You did not inherit them from three generations of row croppers.
Yep.
It was all timber.
Yep.
Yeah.
What, 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years. I mean, basically 2 years.
Yeah.
So it just to me, that goes to show you how bad shit can get in 2 years.
In a hurry.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that look like time and time and time again? And then the wean off process to get it back to its natural state has got to take longer and longer the more that system has been dependent upon.
Yeah.
You know.
Gabe Brown is kind of a name that people throw around a lot, and he has been instrumental in the soil health and regen, and I hate to overuse his name because it's used a lot, but he made a comment that stuck with me one time, and Gabe is known to shoot straight, and he'll tell you what he thinks, and I've used this line with clients. You know, he said if you want to get into regenerative agriculture or any of these aspects of soil health, whether it's minimize or eliminate synthetic fertilizers, get rid of the biocides, the fungicides, the herbicides, insecticides, whatever. The first thing you need to do, and I'm paraphrasing, is reach down into your shorts and see if you have a pair. Find out if you have a pair. Right. And I had to kind of reiterate and recalibrate a client of mine here this past week because he was committed 100%. I mean, bought the drill, bought the tractor, bought the crimper. That's commitment to me.
Yep.
But his first planting did not come out like he wanted it to come out. Now his closing wheels were wrong from the factory.
Yeah.
For his soils, they just didn't match, and his seed trench didn't close. And any no-tiller, long-time no-tiller, experienced no-tiller, knows, and as you guys get into this, you'll find out, if you do not jump out and check seed depth, if you do not check consistency of seed depth, and if you do not make sure that trench closed, those seeds are just going to rot.
Yeah. Right?
They're going to bake. They're going to sit there. They're going to, that trench has become oxygenated. It's going to fill up with water. It's just going to be a disaster.
Right.
So see, that's the first step. Is going back to the failure aspect of the beginning of this podcast. If you're not okay with failing forward, it's probably not for you. We often hear of the sexy part of, hey, so-and-so got rid of fertilizer. So-and-so doesn't lime anymore. And, I don't use, whatever biocide anymore. But there's a commitment that must be made. But I'm here to tell you, to get back to the positive side of this, after only 2 or 3 years of doing it, I have had clients from all walks of life, of all disciplines, doctors, lawyers, professional business owners, blue-collar workers, you name it, call me up and report the same thing that all the other ones who have gone in 110% are reporting. And the results are absolutely incredible.
Yep. That's crazy to me, and I've learned so much today alone just about, I'm not gonna lie, I am the guy that was, when I'm doing a food plot, I'm doing it on a budget. I'm doing little kill plots at home, but but I'm using fertilizers. I'm tilling the ground. Like that's what I saw. I didn't know a lot about this regenerative, this culture around this, and until honestly Casey brought it to me, and now it's like a new thing, and I'm kind of like learning from square one again. But honestly, I'm seeing the more pros to it than cons. Now, I come from a family that are farmers.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's family are farmers. Like, that's their way of life, and they're not organic. They're fertilizers and everything.
Stick and steel in the ground.
Exactly.
And, yeah. No.
And that's okay, right? That's
Sure.
okay. You can't.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst things to do is to tell them that they're doing it wrong when they're 3 generations deep or 2, whatever.
Yep.
And that's okay. But if they get to that point, like many production ag folks have gotten to, where they've looked at it, and kind of like me looking at a smaller scale at my food plots, and they say, you know what? Gosh, we're going to foreclose on the farm, or these inputs are killing us, or you know what? There's a high prevalence of cancer in the agricultural community, and I didn't know this, but actually suicide rates are highest in the farming community.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like number 1, if I'm
Really?
not mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, I
So-
did not know that.
It's a lot of pressure, right? If you have Grandpa's farm, and and today, look at the cost of everything today, from a 2x4 to a sheet of plywood to gasoline.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure,
Yep.
right? And now everybody chases yield. There's my segue into yield and
Sure.
and nutrient dense forages. Is you chase yield, and it's always you got to have the biggest tractor. You
Yep.
got to have the best equipment in that thing.
Got to get your seed in the ground before Henry does down the
That's
road.
right. Exactly.
It's all
either plant first or be last.
Exactly.
It's kind of the way they look at it, and the bankers are a lot to blame, not to get off track, but they encourage this purchasing of 6-figure tractors
Sure.
with GPS units and all
They'll
that
hand it out.
nonsense.
Oh yeah.
Screw that stuff. Just get out in the field, dig a hole, and understand how nature works.
Yep.
And farm in nature's image, and you don't have to go all in. This is for food plotters and production ag alike. You
Yep.
do not have to go all in. Just grab a few acres a year and
Well, I think, overall too, just across everything in a lot of different industries, there's going back to the responsibility thing, there's a certain point in which people our age and our demographic are actually, I think, taking a step back and looking at that. Man, are we really doing this shit right?
Yep.
Like, there's got to be a better way to do this, more
Absolutely.
in harmony, and that farm in nature's imagery, right? Like, there's a better way to do this, and that's all across the board. So I think that's what excited me most about this is coming into it with that responsible mindset of listen, we want to try to do everything as naturally as we can possibly do it. So when I first talked to you, it was one of those like revolutionary. Okay, this is the spark. This is it. You understood what I was saying. I understood what you were saying, and we're off to the races. Here we go, right? And just couple of weeks later, here we are. We're sitting on the farm in Illinois. Well, we're sitting in the barn right now in Illinois, and you got to see the property for the first time today.
yeah.
And I'd be so I think AB
It's
and I
okay.
have asked you repeatedly throughout the day, like, so where are you at? And you're like, I'll save it for the podcast.
So here we
Okay,
are.
So here we are. So
Gonna put your
drum roll, please. Here we
How
go.
long's the podcast?
Yeah. Oh,
However long you want to be. We got a bottle of bourbon, and I've got lattes that are cold.
I thought we were fixing to talk about nutrient dense forages
We
and
will.
all the good stuff.
We will,
All my
but
geek out stuff.
We're not gonna.
We will.
We're not gonna boil the ocean in one podcast here. Let's segment here.
I've been waiting for the answer to this
I
question.
know. How many
for
times have I
hours.
used that bullshit line today
Yeah.
of, you know what? Hey,
Yeah.
Jay, what do you think? I'll tell you tonight in the podcast.
I've been seeing a lot of long necking out of the Ranger though. Like as we're going down trails, he's
Well,
long necking everywhere. And
Yep.
And again, that goes back to the observation thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many things I see. And, when you're looking at 400 or 500 acres, you can't stop and look at everything. Obviously, you're trying to get a
I got a question
Quick
before
look.
you answer about the farm. So when you
I didn't say I was going to answer about the farm. did I? That's tomorrow night's
Okay.
podcast.
That's episode 2.
okay.
I'll tell you on episode 2.
I do have a question before we get to that, but you go to a lot of farms, you consult a lot of clients. Do you get intimidated by any farm that you come on, like big, small, dense? Like what? I mean, do you ever have that intimidation factor, no matter it's really high or really low, or maybe not at all? Like, do you have
Or is
that
it
at all?
or is it simple for you? It's
Yeah.
listen. It's A plus B equals C.
It's
Right?
neither of those. I think like anything, if you ask a major league baseball pitcher if he, was intimidated with his first pitch or his first inning, he probably would say yeah,
Mhm.
or a little bit, scared. But after doing it for so long,
Yeah.
I think it's really not intimidation as much as pressure on the first, 5 to 10 years of my career. The last 5 to 10 years is more. You learn how to do things better. You learn how to only take projects that fit your niche.
Right.
Yep.
And you learn how to, I guess, qualify, for lack of better terms, or vet those
Yep.
projects.
Yep.
So if you do that right up front, there should be no uneasy or feeling of intimidation.
Okay.
However, and I wouldn't say simple, but I would say you become more patient, right? So when I was younger, I felt like I needed to bang out, here's where we're going to put screening cover, here's where we're going to put, warm season annuals, cool season annuals, perennials, we're going to TSI this particular stand, and I
Yep.
think we should put stands here, and blah, blah, blah. You start building out developments. I think I've learned now to sort of step back and say, okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat here. And you also, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're building things without realizing that there are limitations. And, okay, we have to get a tractor, we have to get a drill, we have to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with a lot of farmers over the years. Farmers want to choke us, right? If farmers and foresters do not want to choke wildlife guys, we're not doing it right.
Right.
We're not pushing it, and we're not doing things right. So, yeah, I wouldn't say intimidated. I wouldn't say simple. I would say you want to do right. There
Right.
becomes a certain amount of pressure.
Yep.
I'm at that point in my career where I'm trying to just say, all right, let's, like we talked today, there's a section of the property that we keep calling Turkey Foot. I don't know if that's its new name
It's
or
not
what
going
it
to stick.
is.
I got to change
No.
it. I got to change that name.
Y'all got to change that name.
I got to change that name.
It's definitely overutilized, but you know
Yeah.
where I'm talking about.
Yeah. I got.
And it's getting back to your point. Yes, I've been on so many properties over the years, so many amazing properties. That particular location, you want to talk about a head on a swivel.
Oh.
I felt like I needed. We talked about it, I needed a bass tracker sitting in the middle of that Turkey Foot, and just to swivel in a seat.
Yep.
And just to be left alone for about 2 hours to really figure out how is this going to work. And one thing that I've come to realize after doing this for so long is I could sit there for 4 hours and come up with a plan, sketch it down on paper. But until I put my ass in a seat, or you put your ass in a
Yep.
stand and say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. Deer are individuals,
Yep.
right? We're in southern Illinois. They have their own unique way of using that particular property. They've imprinted by following mama at heel for generations. And
yes.
that's right.
Yep.
And mature bucks, not 3.5-year-old bucks, but mature bucks will learn how to use home turf, home field advantage. And so there's a certain amount of adaptive management. I know I use that a lot. That's going to go on there. But all right, so how will I answer your question that you asked me a dozen times today? Yeah, when I hit a property, I feel a certain amount of pressure to be honest, right?
Yep.
And I'll oftentimes ask clients, are you okay if I'm completely honest?
Right.
And of course they always say, yeah, I paid you, right? And then I'll just kind of spill the beans at that point. This property, and Casey, I know you're no rookie you're not just some dude who's been dropped in Alaska and had to, learn how to take a dump along the river and eat fish for 30 days.
Done that.
Right?
Yeah. They're done that.
Right.
I did it today, and we're in Illinois.
But you get my point. I know you've been in the whitetail industry for a long time.
Sure.
And I can hear it as we talk. So there are a lot of options that we have with that particular property.
Yep.
That property, I know it's your goal to make it. I hope it's okay if I share this
Yeah.
this overall sort of goal
100%.
to make it a top 5 whitetail property in the country.
Yep.
And I love that. And to be completely honest with you, that's one of the main reasons I decided to accept this project. You might remember I kind of hem-hauled, and I was like, gosh, Casey, I don't know if I can commit the amount of time.
Right.
And
You're a
I
busy
actually
man.
opened up some things. Well, we all have the same amount of time, right?
Yep.
Nobody's busier than anybody else. It's just how we choose to use our time.
Sure.
And I opened up a weekend because I wanted to do it,
Right.
because I could hear and feel the same passion in your voice. So it's not by chance that we're sitting close to one of the greatest whitetail properties in the country. It's not.
Right.
So looking at it as a scientist, it's really not fair for me to say this is the best property I've ever walked on.
Right.
Because most of my clients are not purchasing properties after an entire career of being a guide,
Right.
Yeah.
hunting all over the world,
Right.
and seeing the best property, right? If you were
Sure.
able to spend a career, half of a career, whatever you have left,
Not much.
Your time's ticking.
Yeah. What are
Seeing
you
the
trying to tell
best-
me I should get out of this?
but you know what I'm saying. Once you've seen them,
Yep.
you knew what you were looking for.
Yep.
And one of the services I offer and do an awful lot of nowadays is helping clients narrow their acquisition down. You know, they'll pick 3 or 4 and say, help me figure out which
Yep.
one. If I would have walked on this one for the first 13 seconds, I would have said, sign the paperwork and close tomorrow, full cash. Don't do anything to delay this. Make it happen. And you did that, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Whew, okay.
obviously some of you need some more brown water over there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you didn't need me to give you the okay approval. Go ahead. I could tell that you know what you bought.
Sure.
So having said that, and knowing that full well that clients can be listening to this. By the way, Cody's leaving. Just I thought I'd let it kind of rat him out.
He's
trying
going
to
to bed.
Oh, night, little fella.
Yeah.
Some people just aren't cut out for life on the road.
No. He doesn't have a kid tonight, so he's
Yeah,
going to
that's what
be
it
There he is. He's back.
That's it. Oh, he had to get the snuff. No, sorry.
He's a Copenhagen junkie.
Yeah, it's the mint.
Yeah.
Eee.
That's to follow up that chimichanga he had, that
Yeah.
Boone and Crockett chimichanga he had.
Literally. Yes, that thing was authentic.
You know, a little to kind of go further on your point though, like, yeah, we didn't need you to be able to like, hey, this is it. But you've seen a lot of farms. You've been on a lot of dirt
Yes.
all over the country.
Only because I'm old, not because I'm good. Just point that out.
But for me alone, and in my opinion, that makes me feel good because Casey and I've talked about it too. We can tell anybody until we're blue in the face how good this piece is, until you actually get on the dirt, and then you're like, God damn, this is is nice.
And I know it's going to be hard as a listener because when and there are a lot of properties. Most properties I see, to be completely honest with you, can be improved a lot. And I try to give people sort of that bar. Okay, I think you're operating at 30% of your potential on this property, and they appreciate that.
Right.
You're already cranking out some serious caliber bucks.
Yep.
And I still, if I ignore that, and I didn't know what kind of bucks were killed this past year and what kind of bucks are roaming on it,
Yep.
I still feel like, based on the soil health, the ag, and some of the other things we talked about with the timber and managing this property,
Yep.
you're only at about 50%.
Yeah.
And this is what I think about this from the minute I hit the property. Where am I at? Do I feel like I can add another 50% to this property? Most of them are only operating at 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, because they have not cut. Right? There's no timber stand improvements.
Right.
It's full canopy closure, park-like.
Yep.
Nothing on the forest floor but leaves. No sunlight energy at all.
Browse line for a mile.
That's right.
Yep.
Food plots are. They look like the floor of this barn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Let me take you to our food plot. Well, where is it? We're standing in it. Oh shit.
Yep.
We have a long way to go.
Yep.
Your plots, although they are monoculture,
At the moment.
they look pretty
Yeah.
damn good.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of the, with this property, going back to AB talking about the intimidation factor, I've been on a lot of properties. This is the first one I've ever stepped on, just knowing where it's at right now. And I have no idea of our deer densities. I have no idea what our recruitment rates are. I have no idea what our ratios are. I have a general idea because we've been hunting in the surrounding area for a while. But on our piece of property, I have no clue what that is as of right now. We will get a grasp on that. We will understand it. But just the complexity of the farm and the layout itself, it's intimidating to me because I'm in year one, especially because I'm like, I don't want to do too much to mess up what might already be a really, really, really damn good thing, right?
I know.
So, and I'm a big believer. We talked about this today. I'm a big believer in, small bites can make big differences.
Sure.
So that's kind of almost how I'm thinking of going into this approach is like, okay, let's take small bites where we can make small bites that I think are good bets to make improvements, and let's start with that and see where that goes.
So I'm only on my second bourbon, so I'm only speaking half truths.
Yeah.
But
Hence the 50%.
Right.
We're working on 50.
I thought I'd throw out the disclaimer
Yeah.
out there. But that property, for those listening, and I know this is probably overused, but that property, and I had the pleasure of seeing it firsthand, putting boots to it and walking around and riding around. This is a story I would want to follow. If I could see this property as someone else and then not be a part of it, I would want to follow this because, like you said, I can see where the idea of do you ever feel pressure comes in, because you're standing here looking at, it's almost like looking at a canvas that has already been kind of painted by a profestional painter, and you're like,
How do I
go
change
ahead and
it?
add a tree,
Yeah.
Casey.
Ooh.
Oh,
And put a nice little bird over here.
Yeah.
right. I don't want to screw it up.
Yep.
It looks pretty good, right?
And that being said, I know there's things we can do.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
It's just it's to your point, reach down, see if you got a set.
That's right.
And then let's make a run at this.
Well,
thing.
and if you do remember too, today, Jason told us today he had 3. He's got 3 nuts.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I grew
Can
a new
I say that?
testicle. Yeah, I grew a new testicle. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's from tank mixing. I guess
With
I,
your
I
arm,
won't
'cause
be
it
able to
was cool.
sue Monsanto like everyone else because this
You
is
can't get
recorded.
in on that class action.
No, I won't be included. So I'll whatever.
Damn.
But no, I used to reach my arm. I used to mix chemicals, and I guess going to that a little bit is the chemicals. Again, I'm not a tree hugger unless I'm climbing one. Listen, I'm here to tell you that.
Cody, write that down. That's gonna be,
Is he awake?
that's gonna be the next shirt we put out.
But yeah, the chemicals again. I hit that plateau with some things. We could manage the herd, we can manage the habitat.
Mm-hmm.
The hunters you can't manage; they're just hunters. But
So you're saying we're the problem?
not these hunters, but
I
most
believe
hunters.
in that. Listen, AB has been hanging over my shoulder for 9 years now,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Every single year, the very first 130-inch deer that walks out, doesn't matter how old he is, he's like, "Hey, I'm rolling. You want to go ahead and make this happen?"
This year I pushed hard in Ohio.
He did.
First sit-in for the year.
Yeah.
This stud of a deer comes out. Probably low 140s
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah,
Probably a 3-year-old.
definitely
You
a
know?
3-year-old.
But I was pushing. I mean, I reached over, grabbed his bow, and swung it in front of him just to
gonna-
see if
just
he'd
gonna
take
caddy
it.
for him.
Just
He
reach
literally
out.
he caddied for
and
me.
touch it.
I'm standing there looking at this deer, and out of nowhere, my bow just comes in front of me.
Not
like
a word
this.
of a lie.
It's just hanging there. So yeah, I
Take
get
it,
the can't
take
manage
it,
hunters thing.
Take it.
Listen, I'm on him if you're ready to go.
I'm just testing him. That's all. It's just a test. But
It's-
anyway,
we have a lot of fun out there.
yeah.
So that makes me feel good. It's confirms what I knew. But here's the thing for me is I always like to rely on other people that have a ton of experience, right? You've seen everything, you've been everywhere, you've seen all these different environments. Like, how does this stack up? How does this compare? And then completely separate and outside of that, if you put all those properties that you've been on in a box somewhere, just this piece in your eyes, how does that stand? So to know that it lines up and
Yeah.
matches is awesome, because I think it's good that anytime we go into something like this, everybody's got to be on the same page with where we're starting from, right?
Sure.
And I think that's important to realize expectation and understand what we can do and what we can't do. Is that we all know we're starting from, we're lucky. We're starting from a damn good spot,
Sure.
which isn't the case for everybody, and it's one of those deals where we lucked out. I mean,
I think one thing for me at this point is it's, and I even said this to you, Casey. I'm not looking for any more one-off, consulting projects. This year has been absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But there's many times, and I've told personal friends this. One of the biggest frustrations of my job is leaving a property, and not this property, but any property, and knowing that they have a tremendous amount of potential to add to the property, but feeling like, based on feedback, they're probably not going to do even half of it.
Mm-hmm.
is so depressing, and there's not a check or an amount of that anyone could write that makes a field biologist after 20 years feel any better.
Right.
And they may not. I always tell clients, use me. That's what you're paying for. I'm not always thinking about you. If I read a paper or I see something happen in the field, a lot of times I will think about a particular property in Oktibbeha County, Mississippi, and I'll call that client and say, hey, I think this would apply to you.
Right.
But you need to call me, you need to lean on me, you need to use me when you feel like you need to use me. And it's almost like handing over a business, right? There's a reason when people buy a business why they try to keep some of the old management around for a short period of time and then cut them loose.
Right.
It's you can't just take some written plan and take off with it and succeed. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
So when I hear, and I know, I'm familiar with your career. I'm not a real big fan of hunting TV, but I'm a huge fan of your work, all the work all you guys do.
Thank you.
And I feel like we can set goals, we can set objectives, we can develop this property. I can drive 15 hours east, unfortunately, and walk away and know that come fall, a certain cameraman may hand you your bow.
First
but if it's
120.
a 3-year-old, I know you're going to pass him and you're not going to kill him.
Yep.
And that, to me, makes me want to invest more time and energy and thought, thought time,
right.
and saying, hey, listen, I think this is how we should make this particular screen look or whatever.
Yep.
So.
I got a question for you on the research side. So you said when you started to get into research on the soil health side, I have to imagine for you, research isn't like AB and I, we go hit up the Google machine, right? You're doing like the scientific journal type research on soil health. Am I correct in that? Or even hands-on, like just go figure it out in the field?
So the interesting thing about agriculture, soil health, regen ag, is you can't find reductionist science on so many of the soil health principles.
Reductionist
meaning, traditional peer-reviewed in a Journal of American Medical Association, or in our world, Journal of Wildlife Management, Wildlife Society Bulletin, Journal of Mammalogy, whatever.
Right.
You find what you find in there is research where they're attempting to look at nature from a reductionist standpoint. They're trying to reduce it to one variable.
Right.
You can't do that in nature, right? We know that. So research in that arena meant learning how to research nature. It almost meant relearning how to research.
Right.
And I started reaching out to people who had done research in that field, but people who were at the end of their career, to be quite honest with you, who got to that point in their career where they said, you know what, this isn't making sense. This doesn't match up with what, with again, farming in nature's image, or biomimicry, or nutritional wisdom, or whatever. And it was completely new. I took 9 months, practically 9 months off from most revenue-generating activities to pursue this idea of soil health and regenerative agriculture. And what came out of that 9 months, and then the months after, was a whole new thought process, all new products for the food plot industry. And if it would have taken 18 months, I would look back and say that was the best investment of my time, period.
Right.
Still. So
let's talk about the products a little bit. Let's talk about some of the products you got over at Drop Tine. We'll get in.
That's like asking me to talk about my kids. I'd love to.
let's do it. No, I think we're going to get in. This is going to be an ongoing thing as the farm unfolds and the process unfolds. But just general overall scope. Give everybody kind of a look inside of Drop Tine.
So the products aren't for everyone.
Right.
So like I said before, I've been part of the problem with the old school monoculture or minimum culture products. I still have some of those products. There's a reason I still have them. I think we'll get back to some of that, mixing some of that into hunting applications once we get the soil health back where we need it to be. So part of this research, I realized that the only true deer nutritionist, or whitetail nutritionist, or ruminant nutritionist for that matter, was in fact the white-tailed deer.
Right.
So I quickly learned that if I wanted to do research, I needed to put forages in front of whitetails. And by forages, I mean forages that we never heard of, forages I never heard of. And then I needed to talk to people who had worked with goats and sheep and critters that were close to whitetails,
right.
perhaps not exactly like whitetails.
Yep.
So that led me into ideas like, multi-species, I mean hyper multi-species, like 17 and 20 way blends of
many.
the major plant functional groups, right? We talked about that a lot today.
Yep.
And honestly, my seed vendors, if you will, my suppliers, my contract baggers and mixers, I'm a consultant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never really wanted to get into the seed industry. But, and this isn't a story. This isn't just some sexy story to market it. I was forced into it because I was and still am disappointed in what the industry has pushed out.
Right.
There's been some followers, not the type of followers I want.
Mm-hmm.
I'd much rather young, innovative, not imitative. Is that a word?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It is now.
Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, if it wasn't, it is now.
Yeah, it sounds good, especially after 2 bourbons. But so essentially what I realized is, I always tell the story of, we go back to the 80s, mid-80s, where food plot companies were producing and promoting a particular variety of clover,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a deer clover. Commercials and advertisements.
Yep.
And I'm not poking fun at anyone because I bought it. Everybody bought it.
Yeah. Marketing genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time, marketing genius.
Exactly.
That's right. And then we spent the next 20 to 30 years planting clover monocultures and spraying grass-specific herbicides to kill out the grasses, right? And for 20 or 30 years, none of us stepped back and said, hey, wait a minute. If grass-selective herbicides or herbicides in general work, why do we have to do it every year? And what are the unintended consequences? You brought that. That's one of my favorite sayings. Actually, we didn't talk about that at all today.
We'll get to that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's a heavy ship. Magnesium and unintended consequences.
I smelt magnesium, I swear.
Can you pass the bourbon, please?
Yeah.
So, I guess long story short, whitetail. I feel like we have deprived whitetails. Going back to that statement of, if whitetails could talk, they would say, "Guys, come on, help me out. You act like you're innovating, but you're not.
Right.
Help me out. Give me what I want." So, I started kind of putting field observations, which I consider research, right?
And important.
Researchers would not consider that research because it's not conducted by a PhD, an academic type, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't fall under the scientific method.
Right.
But when you put observations from the field together and marry that with some of the research, like maternal effects, which we haven't really talked about, we will tomorrow, epigenetic effects, those sorts of things, I ran into some of that stuff, and it all tied into what I was seeing on not just my farm, but the farms that I was helping, the properties I was helping to manage. So we were noticing that we would give whitetails everything they could possibly ever need: food, water, shelter, the greatest food on earth, right? Forage soybeans that were heavily manured, 6-7 feet tall. Gosh, we should be able to kill every deer in the county. And we were going after individual bugs. But we would notice that even when we gave them everything they wanted, they would make excursions, putting themselves susceptible to getting hit by soccer moms, poached, shot by legal hunters, whatever, caught up in a neighborhood swing set, which has happened. And I don't like that. I don't like that exposure, right?
Despite your best efforts, despite giving them
your
anything and everything they could.
And I get it. I can already hear listeners saying, listen, you're not going to keep. And I worked on a 109,000-acre ranch. That was the moment I realized my dream of owning 1,000 acres would put an end to losing bucks.
Yeah.
I don't care how much land you have, you're going to lose bucks.
Yep.
And we were losing individual bucks to habitats that were not subpar, that were complete, perfect shit.
Right.
And that didn't make any sense to me. I chalked it up for years to, hey, they're just free-roaming deer, right? They're just on their hooves, maybe chasing does, but they're just doing their thing. They're out there browsing. They're constant eating, pooping machines, right?
Yep.
They're a walking compost bin.
Sure.
It's just they're cycling it through. And then it dawned on me in my research that whitetails need to balance certain toxicities. That if given the opportunity, they would eat 150 different species, perhaps not every day, perhaps not both sexes, perhaps not all age classes. But at some point, throughout the year, when we don't want to expose them to the neighborhood, they're going to seek something as crazy as bark on a hemlock tree. They absolutely do.
This is. I found this fascinating. Give them a little insight.
So this was a buck that a good friend of mine, Tim Coker, ended up killing at 6.5 years old. And I learned more from this buck. I passed him at 4.5, sat down shaking with my bow. I said to myself, what the hell are you doing? You're on 95 acres in Pennsylvania. You should have killed that buck. He was just a great buck. And when I realized that he was spending half of his time on us, a little more than half of his time on us, and then he would take these excursions to the neighbor, I went over and I asked if I could see where his trail cam pictures and I could go visit the site.
On the neighbors you're talking?
On the neighbor, yeah. Actually, 2 or 3 properties as a crow flies, probably 1.5 miles.
Okay.
So a pretty good excursion.
Yeah.
Across at least 2 fairly heavily traveled roads that my wife and I won't walk after 2 o'clock because when folks start coming home from school and work, it's too busy, right?
Yep.
So what I found was deer were actually pulling off bark from the hemlock trees. And this is just one example of many, many examples.
Mm-hmm.
What are they seeking? They're seeking the secondary plant compounds. So deer can fill up on a high-quality forage, like forage soybeans.
Yep.
There can be toxicities associated with those soybeans. They will seek to balance or diet mix, as we call it, those toxicities with things that we wouldn't otherwise expect whitetails and all critters, fish, birds, all wildlife do this. We call it nutritional wisdom. Right? We have it as well. So when I realized that, I slowly started to research. I had about 160 different potential plant species listed on the wall in my office. And then I had a tack and a piece of yarn that went over to a mix. So I kept pulling individual species. I'm giving away my trade secrets here for those who like to cheat and follow. Hopefully some
very high tech.
Young innovative, yeah, right?
Yep.
Now, this is a corporate thing, by the way.
Yeah.
I learned this in a corporate environment where I made 6 figures in a corporate job. And this is what they did. And I thought it was the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever seen. But here are these
Until you applied it.
highly paid executives taking pins and yarn and stick notes and making the... But my mind, I don't have an organizational mind, me, personally.
Yeah.
So I needed to do this. So I would have spring reload, which is one of my products, summer reload and fall reload, and then perennial reload. The reload idea was I'm reloading the soils. Again, going back to that whole, it starts in the soil aspect.
Yep.
And eventually, I would end up with about 50 different species. Well, I knew that I really didn't want to source 50 different species, and most plots probably wouldn't express 50 different species, although many we're starting to find will come close. And I narrowed it down to these particular plants that then had little tick marks next to them with what they were good at, almost like an all-star, baseball team. Maybe this guy's got a high on base percentage, or maybe
Love
he's
the
a
baseball analogies. Love them.
Yeah. So then it was okay. If I want to sequester phosphorus, here's some plants that I would use. And then of these plants, there's cool season, there's warm season, there's perennials, there's annuals, and it got quite confusing at some point. Thus the yarn and the tacks.
Yep.
I have a bunch of holes still in my wall from this whole project.
Never mudded them in.
Yeah. So then, because I have some clients who are just, I don't want to say dumb enough, but all in enough to follow along and say, hey, this sounds like fun, let's try it.
Yeah.
That first year, which would have been February, March of 2019, I had clients putting this reload product in the ground all across the country. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie to you, I was shitting razor blades.
Yeah.
As much as I had done this research, it made sense. There was nothing tangible. There was nothing in a nonprofit deer organization publication to tell me that this is how it should be done.
Right.
I had to make a gut choice.
And it's not like you're going against the grain a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
you're 180.
Exactly. Exactly.
You're 180.
And you don't want to look like a moron, right?
Yeah.
By recommending these crazy practices.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially to make a long story short, I was hearing from clients of all backgrounds, clients with small properties, larger properties, clients with drills, clients without drills, people who did this, going back to your food plot on a budget, whether it's 1 acre or 500 acres, people who did it without tractors, and simply by following nature's way, food plotting in nature's image, following these principles of soil health.
Yep.
And they were calling me and emailing me and texting me, and they were actually seeing more positive responses than what I was seeing. And the reason is because I was traveling all over, visiting with clients, and I wasn't spending home taking care of the contractor's home, right?
Yep.
So then I started to focus and pay attention to some of these things. And one of the very first observations I made is I put a pollinator blend, which I developed, which had about 50 different species in it, along my driveway on the way into the house. Long driveway, paved. I wanted people to see butterflies and birds and the whole 9 yards.
Sure.
It was intended not for deer. In fact, right next to it, there are acres and acres and acres of forages, all kinds of forages for them to eat. As we drove up and down the driveway, everybody from my wife to the UPS guy to myself, to friends, in-laws, said, geez, what do you have planted in that, right along the driveway? There are always does in it with fawns. And I thought, to me as a biologist, always does with fawns. Interesting observation for somebody who's, and most of them weren't even hunters, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That see that or think about all that stuff all the time, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I went out and decided to throw a utilization cage. I didn't have one up in the plot because it wasn't a deer plot. Right? It was an aesthetics plot. Right? It was a feel-good plot. Threw up a utilization cage, and what I quickly learned is the number one species that was being worn out to the root was plantain. And I had been told in the past that plantain is an okay from the goat people and the sheep people. It's a natural dewormer.
Yep.
And it's antimicrobial. Lots of great compounds in plantain. A lot of people were not sourcing plantain. They would sell chicory for that purpose. And everyone in the wildlife world even knew that chicory was a natural dewormer. But for some reason, they would eat the chicory, but there were leaves on the chicory. There was plant growth, above ground plant growth. The plantain was annihilated. So to me, there was something going on from a selection standpoint, and I think it was a medicinal use, obviously. And in the spring, worms tend to be common in whitetails.
Right.
And when does are fawning and lactating, there's a huge nutritional demand, which led me to observe something else. Hey, wait a minute. If these does are bringing their buck fawns to these plots on my property and imprinting them on my property on these specific plots with this specific nutrient profile, and I could keep going on and on.
Yeah.
Even if those buck fawns disperse, right, which everybody knows is sort of nature's way of preventing
Incest.
Inbreeding.
Yep.
At some point, what if those bucks make an excursion? Maybe they have a heavy parasite load. Maybe it's the rut, and maybe they got stuck in the, in the neck or something, in the shoulder, and they're just not feeling good. They're feeling sick or whatever. They can't go to the pharmacy like we can.
Yep.
And just pick up a script. They have to seek medicinal plants, and they do it. I know this sounds bizarre. I know this is 180 degrees from what we think should be the norm. So anyway, I thought, well, maybe I can be that guy who kills other people's bucks. Boy, you want to talk about getting under people's skin.
Kill their bucks.
When they're hanging stands and they're staring at bucks in, string bean, soybean, corn plots, whatever, all summer long, full velvet, beautiful bucks, bachelor groups. This is going to be easy, they tell me. I'm going to hang a stand here. I'm going to trim lanes. While they're trimming lanes and telling me at my daughter's softball game about these bucks that I know that they're going to kill in the bow season, I'm laughing my ass off because I feel quite confident that I've set the table. So when they harvest all their agricultural crops, I've flipped the script and they're coming to me.
Checkmate.
Doesn't happen every time.
That's a silent checkmate.
Checkmate.
But I like the odds.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, and there's a whole mess of things that go into. I don't want to say that's turned sciencey, the blending and mixing, but I now incorporate spreadsheets. I incorporate things that I've never incorporated to try to realize what these plots will truly look like in the field.
Yep.
And diet mixing, forage sequencing. This is something that I think we will see probably a long ways in the future, unless I can break through somewhere because no one else is looking at it. But I personally believe, just as we view breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you see somebody drinking a beer for breakfast, it tends to be all right. Never mind, bad example. I got 3 looks there. Like, wait, where are you going with this?
What are you trying to say?
So there tends to be forages, I think, that whitetails will eat, at certain times of the day.
Yep.
Now, if you want to have an evening hunt, perhaps you plant something specific to draw them in. This is bizarre, but this is how bizarre it sounded when we were talking about making a 17-way blend that offered species complementariness, that cycled nutrients in the organic fraction for the successive crop, so we could eliminate or minimize synthetic fertilizer.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff that's fun to think about.
I cannot wait to
Dive in.
peel back this onion. I mean, this is like I said at the beginning of this podcast. If you're a nerd or a geek and you like the data and the scientific side, I mean that's just who I am personally. But
I thought you were talking about me.
No, this whole entire story of how we get into this and what we pull off on this Illinois farm is going to be fun to unpack.
Oh, it's going to be. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to grab a lot of attention.
Yep.
Because the bucks that are pulled, and I know people get used to watching outdoor TV. I'm sitting here looking at a wall of bucks from outdoor TV.
Mm-hmm.
You would swear that there's a 180 or a 210 around every tree.
Yeah.
You don't see the time they put in the stand. You don't see the misses. You don't see, all that goes into it.
Yep.
This property, I believe, based on the team that has been assembled, will produce a crazy number of abnormally large bucks in the next 10 years. There's no doubt in my mind.
That unless AB has any say in that, which he will kill every one of them when they're young.
Listen, all right.
He's a Michigan guy.
Yeah, those guys are dangerous.
You got to watch those
Listen
guys, right?
here, you guys are from PA, not much different than Michigan.
He has a point, solid point.
He
Okay.
does. Fair enough.
I'll
Hunting
drink to that.
heritages are very strong in both states.
Yeah.
It's great.
Fair enough.
But I just have to keep you on the straight and narrow. I've just got to, just dangle the carrot out there. If you'll take, I'll let you oblige. That's just, I'm just giving you the opportunity to say, I got your back. Whatever you want to do, I got your back.
You're in.
That's it.
You're in. Here we go.
Hey, I wish somebody would hand me my bow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's quite impressive.
Now, we did find a couple left-handed ladder stands for Cody out there today, so
I saw that.
Cody looks like the guy from Assassin's Creed right now.
He's got 3 hoods on his head, and
it was 55 degrees today, and Cody put the puffy jacket on at noon. He's got a numb finger, he says.
I will say I have been on properties in every state where you can legally hunt.
Yep.
I've been on properties in Sonora, Mexico, and all the way up to the Peace River in BC.
Mm-hmm.
So all extremes, all corners. I've never been on a property that felt like 100,000 acres before.
Oh, my gosh.
That is actually on the tax map only 400 to 500 acres.
Yeah.
There is not a property that I have ever been on, and there's thousands of properties I've been on, that is as bizarre as it. You almost need a full day just to digest and comprehend what you're dealing with. I don't know who created this land or sculpted it.
Yeah.
But somebody made this for people who want to kill big, mature bucks.
It's silly.
That's a wrap.
It's
right there.
yeah. That's the very first time I left this property, I called AB just as soon as I got service because there is absolutely no service around here.
Except in the buck bed that we found.
That's
Cody
right.
had
Yeah,
4 bars of LTE.
Yeah,
He goes, maybe this is why this deer's laying here. He's like, he got full service.
That location is officially known as the fingernail.
The
but
fingernail.
That is the fingernail.
Yeah, the fingernail.
Cody named that.
But I called AB right after I left here, and I said, AB, there's a piece of ground that we used to lease not far from here that was the best piece of whitetail dirt I've ever stepped foot on. I just stepped foot on one that trumps it because I wholeheartedly believe. And listen, I'm so excited to share it with people because it's going to be such an awesome story just to say, listen, we're going to fail a lot. We're going to have fun a lot. We're going to do things our way, right, wrong, or indifferent. But if there's one thing I can say, we are most likely going to have a lot of fun and kill a lot of big deer.
Yeah.
Like that's just
if
what it comes
anything
down to.
was meant to be, this was meant to be. And it would be a shame for someone to privately own and manage this property and it not be shown.
Right.
in this manner. I mean, the story is absolutely required to do this property justice. And I don't almost sound like, you know,
he's a TV guy now.
Like I'm, yeah.
Listen to him. I hate TV guys.
And I actually, honestly, as we walked around today and you kept asking me, okay, where does this rank? How's this look? What do you think? Did I buy, you know, whatever. I'm thinking to myself, what verbiage can I use? Because you can only say so many things. But, you know, and when we were in the fingernail today, that location it has to be the most bizarre buck, assumptive, I'll say assumptive for my science friends.
Sure.
Buck bedding location in the world.
Wasn't it crazy?
It's absolutely insane from a topography standpoint.
Yeah.
It's like he is laying. He can die with a walker of old age in that location because he has visual.
Yep.
And he can wind anything and anybody from anywhere within danger.
Yep.
Yes.
And on top of that, he can see and scent does in food plots, in bedding, along water, and in transitional corridors.
All of it.
Unbelievable.
From one spot.
Good luck hunting it.
I know. Exactly.
Basically an unkillable
right?
buck from that bed.
And
you know what I mean?
it's no matter the condition either. Like it does. You pick a wind. You pick a you know, rain, sleet. It's not. Nothing is gonna. That deer is secure. If he never left there, he would literally die of old age.
Yeah.
You
well,
know,
he didn't just have one bed either. He had like 4 beds for different winds, all in one little hub.
Yep.
Like it
and
was.
I know people listening to this, including myself, had I not been there myself, would be sitting there, you know, or driving in the pickup, going, "What a bunch of bullshit."
Yep.
It's just a bedding area for a bunch of does, or you know, a bunch of bucks probably bedding there, bachelor group, whatever. We found fresh hair from the season, and these beds look like, so in my part of the country and yours, where the black bears roam, you tend to find trails that they use, you know, basically perpetually, and these things are like cattle trails. They're worn into the ground in a depression type manner.
Right.
And when you find their beds, they're worn into the ground.
You even said this is the most worn bed I've ever seen. I mean, and it's a big bed.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a little doe or an adult doe bed.
On that generational imprinting, right? That's one of the things that I think drew me to this property right out of the gate as well, because you know we're talking 450 acres, but we're talking 450 acres that up until 2 years ago was all timber, never had a stitch of food on it at all.
That's important to mention because I think most people hear Southern Illinois, and they're thinking, especially
crop ground or something.
Yeah, us Easterners,
right?
And they're thinking, oh, just another, you know, whatever. There's, you know, they're starting off with 160s and 170s around every tree.
This place never had crop on it. So as I look forward, and one of the things I'm excited about is generationally now with food and a consistent source of food, and how we're going to present the food to them, how we're going to set the table. That imprinting now of, you know, we were, who knows, for the past 35, 40 years, we might have just been sort of a pass-through from A to B, right? But now, as they begin to make that home and imprint on their fawns and the next fawns and the following fawns, and what does that do to the dynamics of the property itself and the shifting of the patterns and all those things. So that's all the stuff that I'm really interested to see unfold. And I promise everybody out there, we're going to continue to unpack this onion here because there is so many layers to this, and this is a long-term project. Like, this isn't a one and done. We are in this for the long haul. It's my goal to have 50% of the farm, and I shared this with you today, 50% of the farm within 5 years. I want to have as close to, I know perfect is a terrible word, but as close to perfected in terms of huntability, in terms of the nutrition we're providing for the deer, in terms of, you know, how we can manipulate their movements and all that kind of stuff. 50% in 5 years. That's a long haul. We still got a long way to go. We are just getting started. But, you know, our time on property today was very well spent. I think we got a ton of time we're going to spend there tomorrow as well. And this thing's just going to keep going.
Yeah, I agree.
Super pumped.
Going back, we good on time?
Yeah, we're at an hour and 20 right now.
Going back, well, they can turn it off if they don't want to listen to this. But this is the most impactful thing that I've learned in my entire career. So if they want to turn it off, they can turn it off. But, you know, you mentioned basically maternal effects as far as in my mind.
Yep.
So, you know, one of the things, and if any of my clients are listening, they're nodding their heads, you know, like they're at church, because maternal effects are real.
Right.
So in a way, mama does will convey messages to their fawns. Hey, and I'm kind of humanizing this.
Yep.
These are the conditions of this habitat. This is what you should expect. Essentially, this is how big your body mass should be. 99% of the time it is, don't go crazy out of the chute, because these habitat and herd conditions suck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I wouldn't say they're telling fawns that your herd and habitat conditions suck, but based on what you're producing baseline, once you start putting nutrient-dense forages, cutting out biocides, eliminating synthetics, and producing the type of food we're talking about, I can't imagine body weights, lactation rates, recruitment rates, antler sizes. It's going to be absolutely insane.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That's the part that I'm just like, where's this going to go? If baseline is already where we expect it to be, just based on the sheds we found,
Jeez, the sheds.
Based on the trail camera images that we've got already from some inventory stuff, like where this thing goes, I have no idea, but she's going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun, you know, and hopefully it's our goal with this property to also be as educational as possible, right?
Sure.
To bring
And
this
share it.
message, to share this, and that's why we're sharing it. I mean, listen, people kill deer all the time on camera. It's great and it's fine, and it's cool, and everybody loves it. We're looking to give more than that, because we want to make a difference. We want to help people out there. If they pick up one little, the tiniest little thing to make a change in how they do what they do, and it helps them be more successful, then I did my job as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
So, I don't know where it's going, but boy, she's going to be a hell of a ride.
She's going somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was the part that also grabbed me, is the whole educational aspect. I was just explaining to my daughter, she was asking what, she doesn't quite understand. What do you do? And why? How long are you going this time? When are you going to be back? Mm-hmm. I said, essentially the way that you should look at it is, I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Except when I don't walk into the classroom and teach you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I walk outside. That's my classroom. And I teach people who want to learn about deer management and stuff like that. And this, to me, is almost a classroom, right? It is a classroom.
It is a classroom.
So you're opening it up to everyone on the website, which I'll let you talk about.
Sure.
And it's, to me, that's like a public service announcement right there. Go ahead.
Shameless plug, AB. Go for it.
IamHumanimal.com. It's a website. Yes, it's on the World Wide Web, but it's a content hub.
That's right. It's not a website.
It's a content hub, I like to call it.
Story Central. Content
Story
hub.
Central, whatever. There's a ton of information there, and this story will be going live on there, and you can be able to follow it, as I don't know, throughout the year. It's going to be constantly updated, and it's going to be an unbelievable story. Not only to mention that there's a whole bunch of other stories on there that are very near and dear to my heart, too.
Oh, yeah. We always talk about the 186-inch dink that you killed in Iowa. Wouldn't be a podcast with AB if we didn't mention the great Hambino, so we just got to get that out there.
He was of age. He was 7.5. That's all right.
Well, listen, I think that's a good place to cut this one, because we have got a whole lot of work left to do tomorrow when we're on the property. We got tons more on this entire front, from the habitat management, herd management, nutrition, anything and everything. Hopefully everybody picked up a little something here from this one. Jason, glad you could join us on this one.
Appreciate you. Yeah, we're about to crank it up tomorrow.
There you go. I'm looking forward to getting into magnesium, and what the hell else are we getting into?
Just magnesium.
Just magnesium. Maybe he wants to get into magnesium.
Yep.
So that's it for this one. We got Jason Snavely from Tine Seed Co. AB, myself, Cody, looking like Assassin's Creed man over there in the corner. That's an official sign-off, and we will catch you guys later. Thank you so much for listening.
Red sun is alright. Mama say it's some new day song.